All right, welcome to the deep dive.
Good to be here.
We gather all the research, stack up the sources, and basically give you that knowledge shortcut you need. You feel instantly informed.
Yep. Cut right to the chase.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And today, we are plugging into the world of, well, pretty legendary guitar gear. We're focusing on the MXR M75 super badass distortion.
Ah, yes, the super badass. Definitely lives up to the name sometimes.
Right. So if you're looking at this pedal, maybe you own one already, you know it's got this reputation. You want to get the technical info quickly, sure, but maybe more importantly, understand why. Why did this metal box become such a standard so fast? Our sources, they really hammer home this core idea. The M75 was built to be like a distortion chameleon.
That's a good way to put it.
But how? I mean, how did MXR actually build a single analog pedal that goes all the way from that vintage kind of open breakup?
Yeah, like plexi-ish.
To searing, modern high gain, metal saturation. That's what we're trying to unpack today. The actual circuit design that makes that huge range possible.
It's a great question, and the story really kicks off around 2013. The M75, it was the third pedal in MXR's custom badass line.
After the 78 Distortion and the modified OD, right?
Exactly. And those first two, they were pretty specific. Like the M78 was just pure plexi in a box, great sound, but narrow focus. The M75 wasn't really meant to replace those. It was designed to offer something, well, fundamentally different, a massive jump in versatility and control.
Okay, let's get into the nuts and bolts then. The core DNA. It's analog, op-amp based, uses symmetrical diode clipping.
Yep, classic MXR building blocks, you could say.
But here's where I'm curious, based on the sources.
Yeah.
Was that core op-amp setup basically the same as the 78 Distortion, or did they have to change the engine to handle that much more gain?
That's the crucial technical bit. So while the foundation, op-amp gain stages feels familiar, the M75 was designed from the get-go with much higher gain capability baked in. It's less like they just modded the 78 circuit and more like they re-engineered it, specifically aiming for a flatter frequency response out of the gate and that vastly wider gain range compared to its siblings.
So flatter response is a starting point. Makes sense if you want versatility.
Exactly. And this gets us to the stuff players really notice. The M75 keeps this incredibly high headroom.
Okay, break that down. For you listening, what does high headroom actually mean in this context?
It means less unwanted mush.
Yeah.
Less compression and loss of clarity, especially if you hit it with high output humbuckers.
Ah, right. Cheaper pedals can just kind of fall apart, get fizzy, or lose all the pick attack.
Precisely. They clip in a bad way. The M75 is designed to handle that hot signal and stay articulate.
So clarity and definition, even when you're slamming the input, that's actually a pretty big deal for a little stomp box.
It is.
And the specs back this up, right? True mechanical bypass switching, low noise components. Looks like it's built tough.
Oh yeah, definitely road ready.
It's also super efficient. Runs on standard 9 volts DC, only draws about 6 milliamps. Tiny current draw, built for the pro pedal board.
It absolutely is. But the headroom and low noise, while really good, they aren't the main event here.
Okay.
The real work through, the thing that gives it all that flexibility, it's the active 3-band EQ.
Yeah.
That is what sets this pedal apart, not just from other MXRs, but from a lot of distortion pedals, period.
Right. So you've got your output knob, your distortion knob, pretty standard. But then bass, mid, and treble. And you're saying these aren't just simple filters.
Not at all. They're not just shaving off a bit of top end like a passive tone knob.
Yeah.
Think of them more like surgical tools for your tone.
How surgical are we talking? How much control do you really get?
We're talking deep enough to be basically studio-grade EQ in a pedal. It's true active equalization.
Meaning
You can boost frequencies just as powerfully as you can cut them. And crucially, you can do that without messing up your gain setting. That capability is just vital for this kind of versatility.
Okay, give us the numbers. Let's make it concrete.
Sure. So the bass control gives you plus or minus 15 dB. That's a lot of range. And it's centered right at 80 hertz.
80 hertz. Why that specific frequency?
That's right down in the sub-range. The real thump, the air moving depth. Having 15 dB of swing there means you can go from sounding like a thin vintage combo to sounding like a massive 4x12 stack with huge low-end grunt. or dial it back if your amp is already boomy, all without making the core tone muddy.
Okay, that's powerful.
Yeah.
What about the mid knobs? That's always the tricky one with distortion.
It really is. So the mid knob gives you plus or minus 15 dB, centered at 1 kilohertz.
1K, right in the heart of the guitar's voice.
Exactly. That's your body, your presence, where you sit in the mix.
Yeah.
Being able to really sculpt that 1 kilohertz region means you can pull it way back for that classic scooped metal sound.
The V-shape EQ.
Yep. Or you can push it forward, give your lead lines that thickness so they really cut through and sing.
And the treble.
Same deal. Plus or minus 15 dB, but centered higher up at 4 kilohertz.
So that's the sizzle, the articulation.
Precisely. Your brightness, your pick attack definition. If your amp's a bit dark, you boost it. If you're getting that horrible ice pick harshness,
Yeah.
you can pull it right back, smooth things out without losing clarity overall.
Man, plus or minus 15 dB on each band. That's serious shaping power. It really does sound like they weren't just adding a basic tone control. They were thinking like engineers in a studio.
That's the vibe, yeah.
So if this EQ is so powerful, so different from a passive tone stack, where did they get the design? Did they invent it just for this pedal?
Okay, so here's the cool little twist the sources point out. MXR didn't actually invent this EQ circuit for the M75.
Yeah.
They apparently lifted it straight from their own history, from their vintage rack mount EQ units.
No kidding. So they basically shrunk down studio rack EQ into a stomp box.
Pretty much. That's why it's so potent.
That makes total sense now. And crucially, like you said, because it's active, it completely sidesteps the limitations you get with passive tone control.
Right, like on a tube screamer or something.
Yeah, where a passive circuit often just cuts frequencies, maybe boosts one area slightly, and the controls can interact weirdly, affect the gain.
Exactly. The M75's EQ is independent. You boost the bass, it doesn't suck your mids out. You cut the treble, it doesn't make the gain feel mushy. You get this unprecedented tonal freedom.
But hang on, there's often a catch with super powerful active EQs, right? Sources sometimes mention pedals like this can sound a bit like sterile, maybe artificial because they are so precise. Did the M75 manage to avoid that?
That's a really fair point, and I think it did, yeah. Largely because of that high headroom we talked about and the quality of the underlying analog circuit. The core sound, especially when the gain isn't totally maxed out, stays really dynamic. It feels touch sensitive. You still get that feeling of an amp reacting to how hard you play.
Okay.
It's not just this flat, harsh clipping you might associate with some maybe less sophisticated high gain circuits or early digital stuff. It keeps that organic feel.
So let's pull it all together. What does this actually sound like? How can one box cover that much ground, from vintage crunch to modern metal, without just sounding bland across the board?
Well, I think the secret ingredient there is its neutral EQ voicing.
Neutral voicing, meaning?
Meaning the pedal itself, before you touch the EQ knobs, doesn't have a strongly baked-in sound signature. There's no built-in mid-hump like a tube screamer, or a big mid-scoop like some other distortion pedals.
Okay, so it starts flat, like a blank canvas.
Exactly. That's the key. You, the player, get to paint the tone using that powerful EQ rather than starting with a sound that's already heavily colored and trying to fight it.
Got it. Let's map that out. You mentioned the huge gain range. If we imagine the distortion knob like a clock face.
Yeah, you can almost trace the history of rock gain on it. Start really low, say 9 to 11 o'clock.
Okay.
You're definitely in light overdrive territory. Think that beautiful, kind of chewy, harmonically rich plexi-style breakup.
Cleans up with the guitar volume.
Oh yeah, cleans up really nicely. That's where you feel that touch sensitivity we talked about.
Okay, push it up. Midday, maybe 12 to 2 o'clock.
Now you're in classic hard rock, maybe early metal territory. That iconic 70s, 80s crunch. It's got bite, it's aggressive. The complex chords still ring out clearly. It's not mush yet.
Right, the Marshall JCM 800 zone, maybe?
Kind of, in that ballpark, yeah. But then you crank it, 3 o'clock to max, 5 o'clock. And now you unleash the modern high game. This is where the super badass name really feels earned.
Tight. Articulate.
Super tight, very articulate, really saturated, totally ready for drop tunings, heavy palm muting, modern metal stuff. It stays defined even when things get really heavy.
Wow. Okay, that's a massive sweep just on the gain knob.
It is. But remember, switching between those gain styles is only half the equation. The other half is using that active EQ strategically.
Give us an example, like getting that modern metal sound.
Right. So you don't just dime the distortion knob, though you'll have it up pretty high. The real trick is then using the EQ. You might boost the bass and treble quite a bit, maybe up to 2 o'clock on the dials.
Okay, boost the lows and highs.
And then you dramatically scoop the mids, pull that mid knob way back, maybe down to 10 o'clock.
Creating that V-shape EQ curve we mentioned.
Exactly. And because the pedal starts neutral, that scoop sounds really powerful and tight, not thin or hollow like it can on pedals that already have a weird mid structure.
Makes sense. You're carving from a flat bass. What about the other end, like a smooth lead tone?
Ah, good one. For that singing lead sustain, maybe without that annoying high-end fizz some distortions have,
Yeah.
you might actually do the opposite. You'd balance all 3 EQ bands, bass, mid, and treble, maybe boost them all just slightly, like to 1.30 on the dials.
So a gentle, broad push across the board.
Yeah. That pushes your whole guitar frequency range forward in the mix, gives you sustain and presence, but without relying just on cranking the treble up into harsh territory. It sounds smoother, more vocal.
That EQ really is the key then. Okay, let's zoom out, put this in context. When the M75 arrived, where did it sit compared to the pedals people already knew and used? The established giants.
Well, it felt like both a refinement and, in some ways, a replacement. Compared to its own sibling, the M78 Distortion.
That plexi one.
Yeah, the M75 is just way, way more versatile. The M78 sounds fantastic for that one specific thing, that mid-heavy plexi crunch, but it's basically a one-trick pony next to the M75's huge range and that powerful EQ.
Okay, what about against the big industry standards?
Yeah.
Like the Boss DS1. Everyone knows that orange box.
Right. The DS1 is iconic, no doubt, but let's be honest, it's often described as kind of scooped sounding, maybe a bit thin, the highs can get harsh, and it's not the most dynamic pedal.
Yeah, that's fair.
A lot of players, you hear them talk about the M75 as like the grown-up DS1. It has that same sort of immediate plug-and-play feel, but the sound is just much more musical, more powerful, and you have vastly more control with that EQ.
Interesting comparison. What about something like the Proco RAT? Another classic.
Ugh, the RAT. Known for being really aggressive, kind of grainy, fuzzy almost, with a strong mid-range character.
Right. Great for grunge, punk.
Totally.
Yeah.
Fantastic pedal for those specific sounds. But again, the M75 offers a level of clarity and articulation, especially when you push into those modern high-gain sounds, that the RAT's older clipping circuit just doesn't really deliver in the same way. It's a different flavor of distortion.
So looking at the sources, it seems like the M75 was almost designed deliberately to fix the perceived problems of those older pedals, like adding the low-end girth maybe missing from a DS1, or the high-gain clarity that a RA2 might lack.
I think that's a very plausible reading, yeah. It addressed common complaints while adding that EQ flexibility.
But wait, back to that earlier point. If it does everything pretty well, does it risk sounding, I don't know, big generic, like a jack-of-all-trades, master of none?
It's a valid concern you hear sometimes, but I think the active EQ is the answer again, because the bass tone is neutral. It forces you to make the decisions.
Oh.
It doesn't impose one single strong character. So it doesn't sound generic. It sounds like whatever you dial in. It puts the power and maybe the responsibility in your hands. And this massive versatility makes it killer for 2 main areas. First, the studio.
How so?
Well, for engineers, it's fantastic. That detailed EQ lets you precisely carve out space for multiple guitar tracks. You can layer different M75 tones easily because you can make them sit in different frequency pockets.
So they don't fight each other in the mix.
Exactly. Plus, that high headroom keeps the pick attack really clear, which is great for detailed recording work. No mush.
Okay, makes sense for the studio. What about playing live?
Live, its adaptability is probably its biggest strength. You can pull this pedal out, plug into whatever amp the venue has, maybe a bright, clean Fender-style amp one night, a darker Marshall stack the next.
Yeah, the backline moderate.
Right. And you can immediately use that bass and treble EQ to compensate for the amp's basic character. Dial in your sound quickly. It gives you a really solid, consistent core distortion tone, regardless of what you're plugging into.
That adaptability, that must be why it took off so fast. The sources show it became one of MXR's absolute best sellers really quickly.
Oh, absolutely. It hit that sweet spot of doing almost everything players needed from a distortion pedal.
And it sounds like it effectively kind of took over from the older Distortion Plus and even the M78 as MXR's main modern distortion flagship.
I think that's fair to say, yeah. Its success was huge for the whole custom badass line, really cemented it as a core part of MXR's resurgence in the 2010s.
Okay, so if we boil down everything we've dug up from the sources,
Yeah, let's synthesize.
why is the M75 actually important? What are the key takeaways?
I'd say there are three main reasons based on everything. First, it genuinely bridged that gap, vintage breakup and modern high-gain saturation convincingly in one analog box. That was a big deal.
Okay, bridging vintage and modern. What's second?
Second, it brought that studio-level active EQ control down into a standard stomp box format at a price point that wasn't insane. That level of tone shaping was pretty revolutionary for a mass-market pedal back then.
Right, democratizing powerful EQ. And third,
simply put, its versatility allowed MXR to really reassert itself as a major player in the high-gain pedal market, competing strongly against everyone else. It was a statement piece that delivered.
And that design philosophy, it didn't just stop with the M75, did it?
No, not at all. You can see echoes of that approach, that neutral-ish bass tone, coupled with powerful EQ shaping in later MXR pedals.
Like the full-bore metal.
Exactly. The M116 full-bore metal took the high-gain aspect even further, but kept a very flexible EQ. And even the M85 bass distortion uses a similar concept, adapting that versatile gain and EQ structure specifically for bass players.
So that architecture proved really adaptable, which kind of leaves us with a final thought, something for you, the listener, to chew on. If this M75 formula, this robust, high headroom, neutral-voiced analog platform with a powerful active EQ, was so successful for electric guitar across genres, and even adapted for bass, how else could this kind of flexible architecture be used? Could it be adapted for other instruments, other types of effects beyond distortion? It really makes you think about how this one pedal kind of set a new standard for versatile gain and what the next evolution might look like.